you are. It's about time you got here. We've all been waiting for you because you know what's coming up. As soon as I've got my comments online here, there you are. Let's get busy. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the highlight of human civilization. It's called Coffee with Scott Adams, and it's probably the best time you'll ever have in your whole darn life. But if you'd like to take this experience up to levels that nobody can even understand with their tiny, shiny human brains, all you need is a cup or a mug or a glass, a tankard, shells or stein, a canteen, jug or flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee. And join me now for the unparalleled pleasure. The dopamine, at the end of the day, thing makes everything better. It's called the simultaneous sip. And it happens now. Go. Paul, your timing is perfect every time. I really appreciate that. Well, you probably heard there's a horrible plane crash in South Korea. The only survivors were two of the flight crew, and it was a Boeing. And I don't think we know the details yet, but the landing gear wasn't down, and it landed without landing gear and hit a barrier and exploded, and it was just terrible. So there's not much to say about that, except there's a mystery about why the landing gear wasn't down. Part of the mystery is that it's designed so it can't not go down if you want it, because it'll work on gravity, even if it doesn't work mechanically. So it would have to be pretty broken, sort of unusually broken in order not to go down properly. Or was it that they didn't put it down? It seems very unlikely they didn't put down because, I don't know, that seems unlikely. So I guess there's just a mystery. We'll find out what it is. Meanwhile, according to Chris Harrison in the New York Post, the drone activity over New Jersey has taken a holiday, and the number of drone sightings has dropped off. So can we eliminate space aliens? Because I don't think they take a vacation at the end of the year. All right, I'm going to take a minor victory lap because I believe I was the one who suggested that the drone activity would cut way back on a holiday. And that's one of your clues. Meanwhile, Dalhousie University is talking about this building a floating solar still that can desalinate water and generate some electricity. The electricity it makes isn't a big deal, but apparently there's an invention that takes a regular used tire and puts a little plastic dome over it and just floats it out into the salt water. And it can desalinate just using the sun. And it actually creates quite a bit of water. So the thing that's special about it is that desalinating without using expensive materials is hard. But here they've kind of done it with plastic and a wick and an old tire. And it makes a lot of water, desalinated water. That's kind of a big deal if you're living somewhere poor that doesn't have good water. All you need is an old tire and some other materials, and next thing you know, you got fresh water. It's kind of impressive. Well, do you know the company Fiverr, spelled Five and then two R's, Fiverr? It's for finding professionals to do small projects. Well, they've got one of the typical anti-white commercials where there's a white guy who's dumb, but thank goodness there's a black woman there to show you how dumb he is and how smart she is. Now, I've been using Fiverr, so I've used it several times with great success. I like the service. I've gotten really good people to do projects from it, but I'm going to cancel my account because I'm not going to listen to your PR people shitting on white people, white men specifically. So Fiverr, you can do whatever you want, but I'm done with you. So this is a hard cancel. Don't look for me to use you anymore after I've got to wrap up a project, but after that. After that, never again. I feel like, and probably the PR or the advertising people are the ones responsible for this anti-white guy commercial. But you gotta put your foot down at some point. At some point, you just have to say that there's my limit right there. I'm going to cancel you, and it's got to be a hard cancel. I mean, even if I want to use the service, which I do, it's a good service. It's a genuinely good service. It's a well executed site. But no, I can't. I can't be part of that. Um, well, of course, you want to talk about the H-1B thing, which is matured now. So we have a lot more feel for what's going on. So I'll give you a quick update. It appears to me that the following people are all on the same page, I think. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and Stephen Miller. Now, if all three of them are on the same page, and that page is that we want to bring in the best employees where it makes sense, but we don't want to bring in people that would lower wages or take jobs from Americans, and that's what the H-1B and I think maybe the other visa systems were doing. They were being abused. So there seems to be general agreement that if you could use it in its best possible way, it would be good for everybody. But if you used it the way it's being used, that's inappropriate. I mean, it's just bad for American workers. So now that Trump has clarified that he likes the H-1B and he uses the H-1B on his own properties, but Stephen Miller informs us that during the first administration, they fixed the H-1B process or took a shot at it, but under Biden, none of that is still in place. So it appears that at least Stephen Miller and as far away as the first administration of Trump, they were very aware that H-1B can't stand, right? So they opposed it. They changed it. They tried to tighten it up. I don't know if their tightening would have worked. Elon Musk has said that he also believes you can't use the current H-1B process and says that it's easily fixed by making it more expensive to hire foreign people. And I thought to myself, is it really that easy? And I don't know how you'd make it more expensive. Basically, a tariff, right? You'd have to put a tariff on people. So if you're Elon Musk and you're saying, "Oh, I'd like to hire, the top 0.01% of engineers from anywhere in the world," and let's say I'm just making this up, but let's say the government said, "Sure, you can do that, but it'll cost you 20% more than it would," and that's not going to the employee. The employee's not getting the extra 20%. That extra 20% is just going to go to the government because you didn't hire a citizen. Would that still work for everybody? Well, if you were really getting the top 0.01% engineer, yeah, you'd probably pay 20% over the market price. Again, not to the employee, but if you had to pay something to the government to make up for it, maybe that makes sense. And then when it comes down to farm workers or people who would take your cubicle job, nobody's going to pay extra for that. You know what I mean? Nobody's going to pay extra for the same work. For that, they're going to hire American if they can do it at all. So that might work. I think that's in the category of things that are worth a try. But I'm going to revise my current opinion. As one idiot online called it, backpedaling. How many of you are offended by people who learn new things and then modify their opinion? Are any of you offended by that? Do you feel like I'm less of a person if new information causes me to modify my opinion a little bit? Because I'm going to modify my opinion a little bit, right? Here's what I think. I think that this, of course, is a political and economic issue, but it's also an emotional one, and it's very personal to a lot of people. It's not personal to everybody, but to a lot of people, it's really personal. And if you ignore the personal part, you're not seeing the whole field. So here's my current understanding, and I called it what I learned this week. All right, it goes like this. They're asking white American workers to accept DEI, which they are accepted right now. In corporate America, DEI is pretty much everywhere, even though some companies are backing off. And we do think that the government will get rid of DEI in the government. But so far, I haven't seen a direct statement that DEI would be made illegal in corporate America. So here's the thing that I think that I underestimated, and this is one of those ivory tower things, because if you're out of the cubicles for a while, as I am, you can maybe forget how it felt. Like I tell myself I could never forget that, but sometimes you have to tap yourself on the shoulder and say, hey, are you really remembering how this felt? Do you really remember how it felt? I remember the details. I remember my cubicle, but do I remember how it felt after all these years? And I think that's the thing that I was absorbing a little bit. Now, what I'm going to tell you, nobody told me. So as far as I know, this is not anybody's expressed opinion. But I'll bet it's boiling around in you. And it goes like this. Asking white American workers, white male American workers specifically, but asking white male American workers to accept DEI, which for the last several years has resulted in only 6% of new jobs going to white men. 6%. Or is it white people in general? But it's the level of discrimination against white men specifically, but probably white people, against white men is completely unacceptable. So here's what I took away from this that's new. If you tell me to accept DEI, but also bring in somebody from another country to take my job or lower my salary, that's obscene. It's obscene. It's obscene. Is it good for the economy? Well, it could be if you did it right. It's obscene. It's an insult. It's an insult. It's an insult on top of the deepest insult you could ever have, which is, racism. So I want DEI to go away, and I'm sure that Trump's on the same page. And certainly he'll do it for the government. I do trust that that's going to happen for sure. Is he going to do it in the corporations? Is he going to just say, I'm going to get rid of DEI in every corporation. It's going to be illegal, and you better start getting rid of it now, because if I have to tell you to get rid of it, it's going to get expensive for you. So nobody has said this, but I'm going to say it. I feel like white Americans should trade H-1B, which I'm in favor of, if it's corrected and it's done right just to be additive to the country. But I don't think that white Americans should accept it, because this is an insult, and that matters. And let me say it directly. At some point, the insult matters more than the GDP. I've been looking at this as a GDP situation. Like if you have the best GDP, then all boats rise and the country's stronger. We can build a better defense. So I've been sort of GDP focused. I think that was a mistake. I'm going to focus on the insult, because you can't live in the country. Well, let me say it directly. I'll let the GDP fall to correct this. It's not worth the price, period. So if white Americans wanted to hold hostage their approval or acceptance or reluctant acceptance of H-1B until DEI is just absolutely dead and illegal and people are getting locked up for doing it, I'm on board. So I'm gonna just side with white American men, workers, and I'm going to say that if we don't have confirmation that DEI is going to be absolutely eviscerated in corporate America, no, just say no to H-1B. And I'm in favor of H-1B. But as a negotiating position, If any of you white males or people who like white males want to say, you know what, it's too far. It's too far. As long as DEI exists, 0 is the right number, and I will pay that price. I'll pay the price. GDP down 2%? Yep, I'll pay that. I will pay that all day long. You gotta fix DEI. So imagine this. How would you feel about it? Because the feelings do matter. Sometimes the insult is bigger than the economics, and that's where we're at. The insult's bigger than the economics. And by the way, the economics of white people not being able to get jobs is pretty fucking, I'm sorry, is pretty darn big if you don't have a job. That's pretty big. So I'm going to change my vote. I'm opposed to H-1B, even a single person, not one person, unless Trump can confirm that he's going to kill DEI completely. And he should be warning companies already, you better get rid of that. You got like 2 weeks before the law is coming for you because this is illegal. Got to stop it. So let's negotiate. Let's negotiate. So I hope that's a little closer to the core of what people are feeling. There are people who are just saying, we don't want to import people who will change the culture of the United States. That's a different argument. And I believe that importing people who would be positive to the culture of the United States is really indistinguishable from good economics. So if you're bringing in people who you say, you can check culture as well. You say, are you excited about being an American? What do you think of America? I think you could get to very quickly, are you somebody who has a cultural compatibility with our economic system? But if you come in and say, honestly, I'm a really good programmer and I'd like you to hire me, but I really love communism too, then how about no? or if you have some other belief that's just clearly in conflict with whatever we think are the cultural variables that made America what it is, I think you can turn people down for economic reasons if they're not a cultural fit, because the cultural engine is what's driving the economics. So you got to get that right as well. All right, I don't know if we can get that right, but that would be the goal. MSNBC, of course, continues to be the comedy news network. They don't try, but they're pretty funny. So they had a little segment I saw today where one of the hosts was warning people that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are, quote, coming after white people. In what reality are Elon Musk and Vivek coming after white people? So they did that thing that they do with all the news, where they intentionally misinterpret it. Now, of course, they're not coming after white people. They were talking about American culture in Vivek's case, but that's not coming after white people. It's not even close to coming after white people. So, and they said, quote, they coming for you. They said y'all are white and lazy. Nope. Vivek did not call anybody white and lazy. That did not happen in any world. He did say that America, might need a culture upgrade of its own. And I think criticizing America, if you're an American, is always fair. That we can't stop doing that. It's one of our superpowers. We can criticize, we can fight it out, we can improve. So even if you don't like what Vivek said, don't imagine that it's something else. It's not about white people. And it's certainly not saying that, India is superior. None of that happened. In the real world, that didn't happen. He just criticized our current culture, thought it could be better. That's a fair conversation. Even if you disagree, it's a fair conversation. All right. But it turns out that the MSNBC, I finally figured out what those letters mean. I think MSNBC stands for misinterpreting some normal business of conservatives. misinterpreting some normal business of conservatives, because that's their entire program. Uh, Trump said the neo-Nazis are fine people. No, he didn't. He didn't say that. It sounds like you're misinterpreting some normal business of conservatives. Um, Vivek Ramaswamy is coming after white people. No, he's not. He's not. I think you're misinterpreting some normal business of conservatives, because they like to have conversations with each other about what's working and what isn't. Normal business. Well, it made news that CNN was not mean to RFK Jr. in a clip. So I feel like things are changing. And RFK Jr.'s mission to fix our food supply has gone now to, I think, something that is absolutely 100% non-political. And I think the moms are weighing in a way that is going to be really, really important to the future. I think there are enough moms who are seeing all these chronic illnesses with their kids that they have to deal with every day, and they've got the empathy, but also the work it causes, the disruption in family life, all of that. And I think they're done. So CNN aired just had a clip in which they talked to some mom who was saying she didn't like GMOs and vaccines and corporate greed. And Zen Honeycutt is the name of the mom. And she ended up actually moving to a farm to grow their own food because they thought the food supply was poisoning them, and found out that when they grew their own farm, their own food, suddenly the kids didn't have all those health problems. Now, that's not the first time we've heard that story, is it? We keep hearing about people as soon as they get off the regular food supply, their health improves immediately. And CNN ran this and really gave it. I will compliment CNN. They gave it its full due. Now, they did ask the important question. So CNN's person, Mina Dworson, asked her if all this makes her feel like a conspiracy theorist. Now, that's sort of the question that the news you'd expect to ask, because RFK Jr. has been called a conspiracy theorist. He's not, but he's been called that. So asking somebody who's on the same side of him, at least with some of these issues, asking if it makes her feel like a conspiracy theorist, I suppose that's a fair question. But here's the answer that they ran in full. So her answer was, I don't feel like a conspiracy theorist. I feel that the conspiracy is to shut down information in order to protect the profits of the corporations. That's the real conspiracy. And CNN ran that. Good for you, CNN. If there's one thing we can agree on, we got to fix the food system. Now, was it Colin Meaney? Who's the advocate for better food in the United States? I think he was saying that there's a story where the big food companies were absorbed by the big tobacco companies after it was obvious that tobacco was unhealthy. So it looked like that industry didn't have a future. They bought a bunch of food companies, and then they used their evil to turn the food into the cheapest things they could make, which weren't that healthy in some cases, but it was cheaper. And they made it more addictive. So they made it unhealthy and addictive. The cigarette companies, they own some of the biggest food companies. Now, should we be surprised that if you're eating cigarette company products that are made to be cheap but not necessarily healthy, should we be surprised? What's happening? No, we should not be surprised. It's not Colm Meaney, it's Callie. Callie Means. Thank you, Marcella. So I apologize to Callie. I was confusing him with Colm Meaney. Callie Means. All right. So, by the way, one of the things my friend Carmen Simon teaches is that a mistake is more memorable than something ordinary. So by completely butchering Callie Mean's name, you will now remember it because the mistake makes it more memorable. So all's good that ends well. Anyway, so we do have something that I think everybody can get on board on. And if it turns out that Trump, because he was open to the big tent and RFK Jr. helping on something we all cared about, if it turns out Trump's the one that solves food through RFK Jr.'s work, he's going to be the most popular president of all time. I mean, the size of that potential accomplishment is almost incalculable. And I don't think anybody else would have done it. I don't think Biden would have done it. I don't think Harris would have done it. So if Trump gets this done, he's going to win moms. He doesn't have to get elected again, but he's going to win moms pretty hard. Meanwhile, as Jonathan Turley was pointing out, now that the America First Legal got photos of the Joe Biden, and I think the brother and Hunter meeting with all these Biden business contacts in China, and then we have all the bank records telling us where the money flowed. So we have physical photos, and we have the money flow, and nobody has even suggested that the Bidens did anything to earn that money. So I don't think we have to wonder if they were selling influence. That question is pretty well answered at this point. But as Jonathan Turley points out, after years of ignoring the influence peddling scandal, the media is not likely to suddenly pursue the story. You know why the media is not likely to pursue the story? Your first impression would be, oh, they back the Democrats, so they don't want to do something that would be embarrassing to Democrats. That's not exactly why they're not covering the story. They're not covering the story because they're the story. The media is the story, because it's been obvious for a long time that this was very true. And if they hadn't covered it when it was a hint, and they hadn't covered it when it was pretty clear, or they undercovered it. You could argue that they did cover it, but they undercovered it. Certainly, once it's clear that they had a huge story that they didn't cover, they can't cover it now. If they cover it now, it'll be obvious they were part of it, part of the cover-up. So they can't do a story that says, breaking, my management is accomplice in hiding these crimes. Like, how do you tell that story? Breaking, CNN, totally guilty of being an accomplice in these crimes. Because if you're helping them cover it, what's that called? If you are intentionally helping somebody conceal a crime, is that not illegal? No, I don't think we should arrest CNN for not covering the story. But if it's in a gray area where you'd say to yourself, I feel like that should be against the law to cover a crime and know you're doing it, even if you're the news. Now, free speech is sort of a bigger issue, so I think I'd not make it illegal. But it's certainly on the borderline. It's got one foot in illegal, but I don't think we want to go there all the way. Here's my take on what's happening here. I think that for many people, the revelation that the Fine People hoax was always a hoax, but more importantly, that the news media knew it the whole time. It's one thing to find out that the news had told you something that's fake or untrue. It's completely different when you know that they knew it the whole time. That's really different. It's not a mistake if you know it the whole time. It's propaganda. Once the Fine People hoax allowed additional people in the public to say, wait a minute, if that was pure propaganda, what is the other stuff? Remember Gell-Mann amnesia, where when you realize that the stories that you know about are fake, you start thinking, wait a minute, if all the stories I know the truth about are fake, what are those other stories? Also fake. So if you find out that the Fine People hoax was not just wrong, but they knew it because it was propaganda. What's that say about the rest of their stories? I think the Fine People hoax really reframed and woke people up in a way that nothing else could have. Meanwhile, Eric Abinanti is reporting how on X, how there's a Democratic strategist. He marveled at how Hispanics in South Texas had the same view as a lot of what he called cranky old white guys. So Jeffrey Pollock said this. He said, quote, "So what Hispanic voters did in many ways across this country is vote with their wallets. But it is also clear when you think about what happened in a place like South Texas on the border, that sure, that the economy is a part of it, but also there are clear hostility about immigration, which to many of us in blue states and sitting in a place like New York seem like, well, how could that be possible?" And he said that if you were just looking at the words they said, if that's all you looked at, you would think maybe they were a bunch of cranky white guys from Missouri. Now, well, what have I been telling people for, I don't know, 8 years in a row? If you actually had any contact with the Hispanic community, they're not real woke. They're not woke. They want jobs, security, family, God. They're just about as Republican as you could possibly get. Not all of them, of course. There's no generality that's true. But I'm gonna make a prediction. Prediction goes like this. You know how you thought that they were bringing in all these Democrat voters? Well, they're definitely bringing in people that the census will count, and if they don't vote, I think that works in favor of, if there's a Democrat there already, it gives them more, I don't know, gives them more opportunity for representatives. So there's that. But where they vote in the long term, I think that long term, the immigrants that Biden brought in are going to be dominant Republican. I think the Democrats imported millions of Republicans, and they don't know it because they didn't know this. I knew this, right? I mean, if you've watched me for a while, you know that I already knew that if you actually talked to actual Hispanic families, you'd find that they're so compatible with the political right that it would be hard to imagine that they would vote any other way. So I'm going to further predict that on year 1 through 5 we might not see any difference, but if you check back in 10 years, people are going to say the biggest mistake Democrats ever made was importing millions of Republican voters and not knowing that they were doing it. That's my prediction. Surprises are coming. And then Eric Abinanti is also pointing out that another Democrat strategist, Doug Sosnick, he said, quote, "It doesn't matter what the Republicans do, the Democrats, and we don't change who we are, how our procedure," and okay, that's a word salad. Let me read the part that makes sense. He says, "The Democratic Party for 9 years now has stood for nothing other than beating Trump." Does that sound fair? Is it fair that the Democrat Party has stood for nothing but beating Trump? That's what it feels like, right? Feels like it. And he says that's been the only organizing principle of the party. When you ask a Democrat, what are you for? The answer is we're against Trump. So he says we have a lot of work to do as a party. Well, do they? Because Trump can't run for election again. So if they put all of their energy into making sure that the next time they don't run against Trump, do you think they'll figure out that they're not going to run against him again? Do you think? Do you think that they'll really prepare for the last war instead of the next one? Like, I can see this world in which they really get ready to not blame Trump the next time, and then wait a minute, he's not running, is he? Well, we're very prepared not to blame him. No. I think they're maybe a quarter of the way to understanding what happened. Well, according to Post Millennium, the House Republicans want to pass a voter ID law for all the states. Now, of course, I'm in favor of it if it works, but I have a question. Do we have any lawyers here who can answer this question? Can the federal government um, get into the business of the states the way they run the elections? I thought states had wide authority on how they do their elections. Would it pass the Supreme Court if the federal government says, no, states, you must do your elections this way? On some level, yes. Because, for example, I think the federal government tells them what date to have the election, right? So there must be some things that the federal government already tells the states to do, such as you have to put everybody on the ballot. I don't know. I'm just guessing. There must be some things that the federal government requires. Could they require this as well? My understanding would be no, because I thought states had full control over this level of detail. But I guess we'll find out. So I wouldn't predict that it would survive the Supreme Court. Only for federal elections. I'm getting an opinion coming in, only for federal elections. But even federal elections, don't the states have wide leeway? Oh, wait, they could if they wanted by using the Commerce Clause as a loophole. Oh, okay. So that I've got a real legal opinion there. So they could if they wanted by using the Commerce Clause. I don't know enough about that clause or how it's used, but they might have a backdoor. All right. Up in Canada, this seems like a small story, but it's big. So, if you have a coal mine, you got to load things in trucks, and there's a whole bunch of loading things in trucks, and the truck's taking it somewhere. But they've now fully automated it with these big electric loaders. So the news is not so much that this changes the world, and it's happening in Canada, not the United States. But what happens if the price of coal goes way down? What's that do to the climate change people? Because at the moment, the reason that you would build an alternative to coal, you're going to start with what's it going to cost? And if the price of coal goes way down because they can automate a lot of stuff, does the cost of coal go way down? And then does that change energy decisions and make it even harder to fight climate change if you think that that's what's happening? I'm not so sure, but anyway, something to watch. The price of coal might come way down. Could change things. So Russia has a new drone. So it's a little buggy. So it's on the ground. It's not a flying drone. So it's on the ground, but it has this 24-barrel buckshot thing that it fires in the air to shoot down drones that are in the air, but not too high. It can't get the highest ones. But so I see this and go, oh, wow, there sure is a lot of innovation in drones. So now they run out this little buggy and it can look in the air and shoot down a drone. Good idea if you're not standing underneath where the buckshot's going to come down. But this makes me ask the following question. So we've already decided that it's turning into, or maybe already is, a drone against drone war. Would you agree? That right now, the current technology allows one drone to kill one soldier in either direction because they've got these little suicide drones. And then on top of that, they're doing the struggle for dominance of the technology. So this would be part of the struggle to get the technology right. And of course, the Ukrainians will come up with something to jam it, and then they'll come up with something to unjam it or work around the jam. So it's going to be this technological competition. So let me reframe this war in a way that helps Trump when he goes to negotiate, okay? So all this is a negotiating reframe based on something we can observe. The war between Ukraine and Russia has now evolved into a manufacturing competition and an innovation competition. If you knew that you were Russia and the competition was now innovation and manufacturing of drones, but you got to be able to manufacture and you got to be able to innovate quickly. Is that Russia's strong point? Manufacturing and innovation? Now, imagine that their competition is Ukraine, but Ukraine is backed by the United States. So now you have a competition between the United States and Russia on innovation and manufacturing. Well, it turns out we're not so hot at manufacturing, are we? Not like we used to be. But can we correct that faster than they can? Can we correct and innovate on drones faster than Russia? I think that Putin probably assumes we can. And I think there's a good argument that we can. So if you're Trump and you're having a conversation with Putin, would it help to say, look, this has become a drone war, and we're going to be able to make better drones, faster drones, and more drones than you, and you're completely aware of that because we just have a more productive, system in that regard. So if it becomes a drone war, and it's not just a who has more people war, and not who cares more war, we're going to win. So let's talk. I think as a negotiating position, pointing out that we're going to out manufacture and out innovate, and that's going to make the difference. That's basically going to be the war at this point. That's a strong negotiating point. So I'll just put that out there as a persuasion fact. All right. We really don't have much going on today. It was kind of a slow news day, kind of a holiday Sunday. But I want to go back to the little dust up on the H-1B stuff. Still some work to do, but I got to say, I mostly felt good about the quality of the argument. I also felt good that conservatives were somewhat united in the agreement that free speech and X and a real healthy agreement or disagreement in this case can move you forward. I feel like almost everybody on the right got smarter about immigration and H-1Bs. Would you say that's true? At least everybody was involved in the conversation. I think we all learned something. I did. I definitely did. And that feels like it moved things forward. Now, the other thing that happened is that Trump has now weighed in. If there are people who are MAGA and they're trying to represent Trump, which seems to be their primary goal, and Trump now clarifies that he likes H-1B, Stephen Miller has clarified that clearly Trump and Stephen Miller need it fixed. Elon Musk says we need it fixed. Everybody agrees we need it fixed. I think that Trump has enough leadership and enough credibility at this point that he can simply get the MAGA folks to align with his view. So this was fascinating because I've told you before that one of Trump's superpowers is that he's watching. He's always watching. So if his base is making a move, he's watching. So that entire conversation, I guarantee you, he knew what was going on from start to finish. And he waits for it to kind of die down, which was exactly the right play. I'll tell you again that whoever is advising Trump is really good. Like, I don't know if it's a team of people or if he's got one person he trusts the most, but the way he cleverly stayed out of it until the full emotion and arguments were surfaced, and then after we'd exhausted ourselves, he comes in and he says, "Here's the deal." I feel like that was amazing. Like that was completely inspiring. Are we still mad at each other? A little bit. Are people still disagreeing? A little bit. But I think we can respect the system that got us to this place, not the H-1B system, but we can respect the conversation. We can respect the fight because I don't think anybody was fighting to hurt anybody. Nobody was in it to make the world worse. Nobody was in it to do anything negative. Everybody was in it for America. And we weren't all on the same page about what works and what's practical and what issue are you talking about and are we conflating things, but we kind of sorted it out. And I think this is where, what I've called the internet dads, but it's really moms and dads. I think that they were really, really helpful. And I think that watching the fight and that knowing that we recognize certain personalities as being more productive in their opinions, that's why they have big accounts in most cases. And I think that really, really made a difference. Now, I don't know if any of you changed your opinions at all, or even that matters, but I'm curious. In the comments, did anybody modify, even a little bit, did anybody modify their opinion on the issue of foreign workers? Because as you know, I did, a little modification. I I didn't start out even talking about H-1B. I was just talking about we need the best engineers, but you have to talk about the system. And once people who were closer to it said, "Oh no, it's totally abused," well, I learned that, and then I could move to a second opinion, which is that needs to get fixed. So I feel like I got pushed in a productive direction, and to the extent that I could do it, I was trying to help push anybody who wasn't there also toward a productive understanding of things. They don't need to agree. I'm not pushing anybody to agree with me. I'm only pushing to make you understand the ins and outs. And one thing I wanted people to understand is we don't really know the economics of this stuff. And so if you're trying to argue on the pure macroeconomics of it, well, we're not really smart enough to know, where to draw the line for that. But if it comes down to how it makes you feel, that's a little easier. And like I said, as long as DEI is the dominant operating system of our economy, which it is right now, then I don't think any white man should accept even one person from another country. And if you want to use that to negotiate really the things that everybody wants, because everybody on the Republican side wants to kill DEI, and most of them want H-1B fixed. Small percentage say don't bring in a culture that we don't like. But I think that we can just reach the right. I think we can get to the right place by understanding that culture is part of the economic decision. All right. Should be canceled and start from scratch. Well, I think maybe Elon's approach of just making it more expensive to hire from another country, it might be a simple, elegant way to get what you want because follow the money always works. Like monetary incentives pretty much will guarantee what the future is. I think I told you yesterday some fake news that I need to correct. Some people said that Elon Musk had a fake account, anonymous account that he was using to interact on Spaces and some other things, and apparently that's not true. I did listen to one of the accounts that they said was his, and it was definitely his voice, 100% his voice. But I think I understand that to have been an AI-generated voice today. I'm not 100% positive what's going on there, but Musk unequivocally is saying that he doesn't. That's not him. I don't think he would lie about that. So that would be a weird thing to lie about. Would seem out of character. So I believe him that those are not his own accounts. Yeah, how would you have time to run another account? It's a bioweapon if we take all their good people. Well, I don't think we're going to take all of anybody's good people. Well, actually, Elon Musk has weighed into various spaces, but it's usually one that is close to something he cares about. There's a guy who sounds a lot like him. You know, if that was just somebody who has the same voice patterns, I'd be really surprised because his voice patterns are so unique. All right, what do we got here? Uh, China, China, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan will build a railway bypassing Russia. So they're going to deliver stuff from China to the European Union without going through Russia. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, I feel like Putin can be made an ally of the United States simply by uh, simply by explaining to him that China isn't going to be his friend in the long term. In the long term, I'm not so sure China is a friend. Although, realistically, China is really smart about a lot of stuff. So I don't think they want to cause any trouble with their nuclear power with their biggest border. So I think they'll be well behaved with Russia. Do you think the Indian intelligence service might line up a few H-1Bs? Uh, I mean, I think every intelligence service has a way to um, insinuate itself in every other system. So that's not a special risk, I don't think. I mean, it's the general risk of everything all the time, but maybe not a special risk of the H-1B stuff. Um, Canada is the playground. What? All right, just looking at some of your comments. Uh, all right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go talk to the people on locals a little bit privately. Thanks for joining. There'll be lots of news tomorrow. I think tomorrow is going to be a real newsy kind of a day. And we'll catch up with you then. But for now, locals coming at you. Local supporters in 30